Does Hibor have you hexed and P- perplexed? Coming up on S&P Property.
Hibor is definitely more risky
and could be volatile.
This is the rate at which banks in Hong Kong lend to each other.
Okay, so you found the perfect flat in Hong Kong. Now comes the hard part. It's time to sign your life and soul away to the bank for a 20-year mortgage. Are you ready? Well, this week's letter gets right to the point. He writes, Hibor, or P-, is Hibor more risky, and is it a secure benchmark to borrow? Let's turn out to our experts to see what they think.
Hibor stands for Hong Kong Interbank Offering Rate. This is the rate at which banks in Hong Kong lend to each other. This rate is driven up and down by the amount of liquidity in the market.
Right. We know that Hibor is the rate at which banks lend to one another. And we know that Hibor is also affected by liquidity. But what does water have to do with anything? Well, when there's a lot of money flooding into the market, Hibor typically falls. And when the money dries up, Hibor typically rises. But a lot of things can affect liquidity. When markets are bullish and a lot of foreign investors are pumping money into Hong Kong so they can buy Chinese equities, that gets you a lot of liquidity. But let's say there's a massive IPO and everybody's money is tied up in IPO subscriptions. You get the picture. So that's Hibor loans explained. But what about loans based on prime? Well, prime loans are based on a mysterious force that few people understand. A dark force, otherwise known as the US Fed. Well, actually it's Bernanke now, but you must admit Greenspan has a better effect. Okay, so the US Fed sets its own prime rate, and because of the Hong Kong dollar peg, that pretty much determines what the prime rate is going to be here in Hong Kong. Banks such as HSBC, Hang Seng Bank, and Bank of China presently set their prime at 7.75%. Everyone else is 8%. But you have to look at the bottom line, because a prime of 7.75 minus 2.75 equals 5. And a prime of 8 minus 3 is still 5. See, I was paying attention in maths class. But that still doesn't answer the question, which loan should we go for? A loan based on Hibor or a loan based on prime? Well, we have to understand that Hibor can fluctuate pretty wildly.
The Hibor rate has actually gone up. The 3-month Hibor rate has actually gone up by almost like 14% when compared with that in November last year and the rate that we're experiencing at the moment.
To get a better understanding, let's get some historical perspective. In December last year, the 3-month Hibor was 3.9%, and that has climbed nearly 1 percentage point to just about 4.7% today. Now here's the 5-year chart. As you can see, in January 2004, the rate was little more than 0.07%. That's practically free money. So there must have been a lot of liquidity sloshing around the market at that point in time. But let's go back a little bit further to, say, 1997. Ouch, those are some jagged peaks. The 3-month Hibor during those days reached more than 15%. So ultimately, what you choose is based on your tolerance for risk, and most homeowners are not that tolerant.
Hibor is definitely more risky. So unless you're a real follower of the Hibor rates and you can predict what's going to happen in the future on interbank lending, then we suggest to stick to prime rate and prime minus as a borrowing rate.
Which is why, according to the Monetary Authority, the vast majority of mortgage loans in Hong Kong are based on prime. But if you absolutely insist on getting a loan based on Hibor, at least get one with a cap. That's all for this week. This has been Michael Logan.